All right, UFC 319 full card predictions. It's been a few months, but we got a good card. So yeah, let's just get right into the predictions. First fight of the card, we've got Alibi Idiris versus Joseph Morales. I haven't been watching TUF that closely, so I'm not exactly sure how good these guys have been doing on TUF. But this is the flyweight finale. From what I've heard, Alibi Idiris has looked pretty good, and Joseph Morales has looked decent, but not as good. But just based on the pre-UFC resumes, I think Idiris has had some pretty good competition. I think not a lot, but a couple of the people that he's beat on the original scene would have made it to a similar, like either TUF or the Contender Series, had they won their fight against him. And I don't think that can be said the same about Joseph Morales. He was formerly in the UFC, but that was, almost 7 years ago when he got cut. He fought Davison Figueiredo and then someone else who wasn't very good, and he got cut after his second loss. But since then, he fought three guys that aren't very good, who wouldn't be considered UFC level or Contender Series level. And then he got signed to Ultimate Fighter, and this is like his opportunity back into the UFC. But I think with Alibi Idiris, he's like actually on a genuine good run. He's 10-0. He's fought good guys. He's on the more like legitimate path to the UFC. And I think he's a better fighter, so I'm going to pick him to win. He doesn't look like the most technical sound guy, but when it comes to flyweight, I mean, obviously that's not, the most important thing. We've got guys like Pantoja and Asu Almabayev, and I think Almabayev's from the same country. They're both from Kyrgyzstan, or Kazakhstan, or whatever, which one they're from. So you don't need to be the most technical guy in the world to get in the UFC at flyweight, especially if you're dangerous, and Alibi Idiris is pretty dangerous on the feet. So, yeah, I'm going to pick him to win this fight. Next fight of the card, Karine Silva versus Dione Barbosa. I'm going to go with Karine Silva just because I think that this is a pretty evenly matched fight. I think maybe I'd pick Dione Barbosa if this fight was under normal circumstances, but Barbosa is taking this fight on short notice. Karine Silva was supposed to fight someone else, I don't really remember, but Dione Barbosa stepped up on short notice. So because of that, I'm picking Karine Silva. So yeah, next fight up the card, Nursulton Ruziboev versus Bryan Battle. Bryan Battle is the favorite in this fight, but I'm going to pick against him. A couple reasons. One, I think he's pretty overrated as far as his resume goes. Like most of the fights that he's had in the UFC, I thought he did good and looked good against a good guy, but then the win ages kind of poorly. Like AJ Fletcher, I thought he was a really good fighter. I was shocked when he got cut. I was like, this guy's top level. He looked technical against, Bryan Battle. And then AJ Fletcher got cut and lost 3 in a row on the regional scene. Hasn't been doing super hot. Kevin Jose, same thing. I was like, this guy's pretty good. I thought that Kevin Jose was good because of the classic trick where Adesanya says the guy's good. Just like Adesanya said that what's his name? Blood Diamond was the best striker he's ever seen or something like that. And then Blood Diamond goes 0-3 in the UFC and gets cut. Kevin Jose lost. He had a good win in the UFC. I think he beat Kiefer Crosby, which isn't that good of a win. I think Kiefer Crosby's 12-10 or has a pretty shitty record. But lost to Bryan Battle, and I was like, oh, good performance of Bryan Battle. He beat a pretty good guy. And then Kevin Jose goes on to lose pretty clearly to Jonathan Michal, or whatever that guy's name is, who's kind of a nobody that most of us haven't heard of. So how good is that win? Andalusa, same thing. It's I know that was it was a no contest because of an eye poke, but Bryan Battle was winning that fight, and then Andalusa kind of quit from an eye poke, and then Andalusa goes on to lose to Phil Hawes, and I think he might have been cut from the UFC too. Gabe Green, same thing, loses to Bryan Battle, doesn't fight for 2 years, comes back, looks like shit against did he win? Oh wait, whatever. Gabe Green has looked significantly worse, and after the Bryan Battle fight, it's kind of been clear Gabe Green was never really that good. Especially with how shit he looked in the Bryan Battle fight. Takashi Sato, same thing. I think after the Bryan Battle fight, he got choked or lost by decision to Gunnar Nelson. Then got cut from the UFC. Tresean Gore, he's lost to everyone now. Lost to Cody Brundage after their fight. Lost to Marco Tulio. He lost his last fight to Rodolfo Vieira. Looked really bad in that fight. Gilbert Urbina, that win was always kind of shit. The Urbina, I think the brothers. Gilbert Urbina has always been bad. He just got knocked out again. He's been knocked out in his last 4 fights. So that was never really a good win, but again, it didn't age very well. Andre Petrosky, same thing. Bryan Battle beat Petrosky on TUF. And then Petrosky's looked bad against everyone. He looked bad against Shabazian. He looked bad against Meerschaert. He looked bad against Malkoun. So just again, not a very good win. And I think his only good win in the UFC so far has been at 170, and it was against Randy Brown, where he got out physicality. Kind of. I mean, he did, hold Randy Brown against the cage better than Randy Brown held him against the cage. But in the cage in the clinch when they were striking, Randy Brown had an advantage. On the feet when they were striking, Randy Brown used his size and his length as an advantage. And Randy Brown is much smaller than Ruziboev. I think Ruziboev has a 3-inch height advantage. Ruziboev does have kind of short arms, so I don't think he's going to be able to land on the outside as easy as Randy Brown could. But he's a much bigger, much stronger. He's like a big 185er. He's 6'5", and Randy Brown is a 170 pounder. And Bryan Battle was smaller than Randy Brown, and he's coming up to 185. And Takashi Sato, I think, is his only win at 185 in the UFC. I could be wrong. Yeah, he lost to Renat, and Renat Fakhardinov is a very similar fighter to Ruziboev. He's explosive, he's big for the division, he has good control when he's on the ground, he likes to make the fights boring if he can, and Fakhardinov easily controlled by battle, sat in his guard basically the whole fight, and he knocked him down on the feet in the small amount of the fight that was there. So yeah, Ruziboev is also almost undefeated at 185. I think one out of his, pretty sure he has 6 losses or something like that. Let me check. He has 9 losses. Only one of them was at 185. The rest of them are at welterweight. And most of his wins, I think I want to say 30 of his wins were at 185. So I think he's 30-1 at middleweight and 6-6 at or 6-8 at 170, something like that. I know he hasn't looked the best in the UFC, but his only loss, I think, so far was against Joaquin Buckley, and that was at 170. And Joaquin Buckley went on to be a fight away from a title shot. He wasn't as good as we might have thought he was, but still, he was one of the top guys at welterweight. And Ruziboev made it close until the end of the fight. I know Ruziboev didn't look good in his last fight against Dustin Stoltzfus. That was a very weird fight. The fight was pretty even. Stoltzfus was a little bit ahead in every round, but Ruziboev would land 2 clean wheel kicks around and knock Stoltzfus down to get the win. That was a weird fight, but yeah, Bryan Battle hasn't looked good at 185. Ruziboev has looked, he's been pretty much undefeated at 185. Good control, good power, good explosiveness, similar to Renat. I think he's just going to win the fight by the same way Renat did, just have a slight advantage on the feet and a big advantage in the grappling as far as control goes. So, yeah. Next fight up the card, Drakkar Klose versus Edson Barboza. I'm going to go with Drakkar Klose, just because he's a big... He's not big. He's shorter than Edson Barboza, and he's got a small reach, I'm pretty sure. But he's just, his frame is very filled out. He's very much a 155-pound fighter. And Edson Barboza, formerly a 155er, coming up to from 145 to 155 for the first time in, I think, since Fight Island. What? I want to say he fought Dan Ige on the Khabib Poirier card or something like that around then, or maybe he was on the Oliveira Kevin Lee card, something like that. But he's been at 145 for a while, and he's coming up, which I'll get to in a second. But Barboza looked pretty bad in the grappling against Bryce Mitchell 3.5 years ago, which was 3.5 years closer to his athletic prime. He is 39 now. And Bryce Mitchell is currently a 135er and didn't look that much bigger than Said Nurmagomedov, who's been a career bantamweight. And Drakkar Klose is again, like I said, he's not, doesn't have the biggest frame, he's not the tallest 155er, but he's wide. His frame's very filled out. He's thick in the legs, thick in the arms, wide shoulders, and he's a very, I would say he's an imposing large 155er, other than his height. And he's 9-3 in the UFC. Has only lost to Beneil Dariush, Joel Alvarez, and David Tamer. And I think a lot of people today might not know a ton about David Tamer, but in his day, he was pretty legit. And that loss was, 8 years ago in 2017. And other than, I think David Tamer's only loss in the UFC was to Charles Oliveira, shortly after this fight. So, not a bad loss. Joel Alvarez, he's pretty hot. He's doing pretty good right now. He's going up to 170. He just pulled out of a fight, but he's been pretty legit. And Beneil Dariush, they had a pretty close, good fight. I think it was on the, I want to say it was on the McGregor-Cerrone card. where Drakkar Klose rocked Beneil Dariush and then kind of ran after him and got chinned. But they were going back and forth for a while, and Drakkar Klose had a bit of an advantage in that fight. Beneil Dariush is a pretty legit 155er, and I know that Dariush got knocked out by Edson Barboza around that same time, or no, actually well before that, probably like 2016. But Beneil Dariush was the favorite in that fight, and he was winning that fight. Or he might have been the slight underdog, but he was winning that fight with the grappling. And then Edson Barboza got kind of an out-of-nowhere knockout. And I think a lot of people are picking Barboza because Drakkar Klose just got finished in his last fight. But since 2018, Barboza's only finished 2 fighters. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I do know that fact to be true. I think it was Billy Quarantillo and who's the guy that got the delayed knockout? Shane Burgos. Those are his only 2 finishes since 2018, and he's fought a lot since then, pretty much all at 145. So if, Edson Barboza is not finishing basically anyone, I don't get why people are picking him to like get a fluke knockout after getting out-grappled like he did against Beneil Dariush, or get a wheel kick like he did against Terry Edom. So yeah, I think that Drakkar Klose is good on the feet. He's defensively responsible. I know he's been chinned before by Dariush, but I think that he's, like I said, pretty defensively sound on the feet, pretty good on the feet, and he's a pretty good grappler, and he's big. And for an Edson Barboza, who has been at 145 for 5 years, and he's kind of like on the latter end of his career, I don't really like that. I think it's generally a bad sign when fighters go up a weight class like this late in their career. You think of, I guess BJ Penn went down a weight class, but a couple guys like Chris Weidman, after he got finished by Rockhold and Yoel Romero, he went up to 205, and he got finished by Reyes, and he got finished by Eric Anders recently. So I think it's generally a bad sign when people go up a weight class late in their career, and I think that Barboza is kind of an example of this. I do think he has a speed advantage, and I think that if Drakkar Klose just kind of runs at him, Barboza can have success just landing on the feet. But I think that as the fight as a whole, I think that Drakkar Klose is going to have an advantage when you factor in his good work on the feet, his size, and the grappling. So yeah, I'm going to go with him, probably by decision, but I could see him getting like a late ground and pound TKO or maybe a submission if Barboza gives up his back. I also don't think Edson Barboza is 5'11" like the UFC stat says he is. I think that they're probably closer in height than a 2-inch difference. Next fight on the card, Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. I don't think that Chase Hooper is that much better than Alexander Hernandez. I just don't really see how Hernandez wins. Kind of a similar situation to the last fight. It's like he could be maybe better than Hooper. Maybe not better, but like close in skill level. I just don't really see how he wins. If you're going to beat Chase Hooper, you're probably just going to KO him on the feet like Steve Garcia did. Or, drop him a couple times and win a decision. But Alexander Hernandez doesn't really do that. Like, you look at his last, 4 fights? Maybe arguably could have lost his last 4. He won his last 2, but against Kurt Hollabaugh and Austin Hubbard, it was arguably a robbery. They could have lost. A lot of people picked him to lose that fight. And then he clearly lost to Bill Algeo, and the Dame Jackson fight was close. But he could arguably be on a 4-fight losing streak. And of all those fights, they were close because it's not like he's beating the other guy up or dropping them over and over again, or making a clear difference on the feet or even in the grappling. And that's kind of what you need to do to beat Chase Hooper. You need to be able to do a Steve Garcia and drop him a couple times. And I think that if he doesn't finish Chase Hooper on the feet, I think there's a good chance he gets controlled to a decision like Chase Hooper did against Jim Miller, or he gets finished on the ground because Chase Hooper's a really dangerous grappler. Hernandez hasn't finished anyone other than Mike Breeden and Chris Gritzmacher since the Beneil Dariush fight, which was forever ago, and that was Hernandez's debut. And there's a little bit of a story to that fight. Hernandez took the fight on short notice. Dariush was supposed to fight someone else. He was a big favorite. He got knocked out. And a lot of people thought that Hernandez was going to be the next big thing after that fight, but he clearly hasn't lived up to that. He was 8-1 when that fight happened. He's 16-8 now. He's not the guy that people thought he was going to be. Like I said, his only finishes are over Mike Breeden, who Mike Breeden was losing to Anshul Jabli. He got finished by Terrence McKinney super quickly. He's not a very good fighter. And Chris Gritzmacher, who literally got finished by Artem Lobov on the Contenders or on the Ultimate Fighter. It's like Hernandez isn't much of a finisher, and you kind of got to finish Hooper on the feet if you want to beat him. Hernandez also lost to Bill Algeo, and Bill Algeo has kind of a similar style to Chase Hooper on the feet, but Hooper's a much better grappler. I see this every time Hooper fights, especially on this recent run, but you always see the back take to mount transition where he like kind of loosens the body triangle and he like rolls the other guy to mount. That's a good bet. You'll see that transition in this fight almost 100%. You've seen it in Chase Hooper's last 5. Again, I don't know if Hooper's going to get the finish. I just think that if the fight goes to the feet, early on in a round, or not the feet, the ground, if Hooper gets a takedown or a knockdown or, Hernandez slips or something and Hooper ends up on top or in a dominant position, he's going to be there for the rest of the round or he's going to get a finish. So I don't really see Hernandez like getting taken down and then, working back to his guard and then getting feet on the hips and creating a scramble and doing a technical stand-up and all this. I don't really see that happening with Hernandez. Like he's not very dynamic off his back. He's not very dynamic in the wrestling. He's not going to create a big scramble and, do some Rafael Alves, roll around on the guy's head and end up on your feet. Like, no, he's not that guy. I'm going to pick Hooper to win this. Either by, a finish somewhere during the fight or by decision. I guess that's how every fight goes. It's either a finish at some point or a decision, but you know what I mean. It's going to be like he gets the position and he finds a rear naked choke or the arm bar or the darce, or he wins a decision just by controlling him on the ground the whole time. So, yeah. Next fight of the card, Jessica Andrade versus Lupita Godinez. This one's one of the more 50-50 fights on the card, and that's just because Lupita Godinez has pretty close fights in most of her fights. She pretty clearly won against Julia Plastri, but her last 2 before then, I think it was against Mackenzie Dern, Tabitha Ritchie, or something like that. They were pretty close. Just Godinez always keeps it close, which is not a very good style. And I feel like a lot of the close decisions she's lost a lot of them. And that's kind of why I want to pick Jessica Andrade. Another thing, Andrade, especially in her recent run at 125, like the reason why she's lost a ton of them, like Marina Rodriguez and Natalia Silva, I guess Natalia Silva is just good, but Marina Rodriguez, people like that. The reason why she's losing these fights is because she's so much smaller. Like Jasmine Jasudavicius, she is way smaller. She's 5'1", which is smaller than almost everyone at 115, not to mention 125. But Andrade is back down to 115, and she's fighting Godinez, who's only 5'2". She has a reach advantage over Godinez, so it's not like she's way smaller like she has been recently. You look at Godinez's most recent fights, she lost a pretty close striking match to Mackenzie Dern, where neither of them could get the grappling going, and Godinez kept it close. And if you watch Andrade versus Dern couldn't get the grappling going, and then she got whooped on the feet and dropped like 3 times and then TKO'd and finished. So, in that scenario, like Andrade, they fought a similar fight, and Andrade won it way clear. And like I said, Godinez is almost always in close fights, and she loses a lot of those decisions. So, I think if the fight's close, good chance that Andrade wins the decision. One thing that makes that a little clearer is you see this a lot with, I think, Jake Paul, but like heavy men's fighters, when they're fighting a guy who's smaller, usually it's like a power puncher versus a non-power puncher, like Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. The judge is just, if it's a close round, the judge is going to go with like, well, I think Andrade hits harder than Godinez, and they landed about the same amount of strikes, so I'm just going to go with Andrade because she has to have hurt Godinez more, even if the round's pretty close. Like Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva, other than the knockdown, that fight was pretty close, but Jake Paul got a lot of the rounds because people think he lands harder, and he landed as much as Anderson Silva. And Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder won. They landed about the same. If you watch in slow motion, you'll see that Fury's landing a little cleaner and, probably doing the better boxing, but Wilder hits harder. Everyone knows he hits harder. The judges hear the punches on the arms. They hear the punches on the gloves. They're like, you know what? Wilder's probably hitting harder, so let's give him the round. So I think that's what's going to happen with this fight. Is it's going to be close on the feet. Andrade is going to shut down the grappling and say 2 of the 3 rounds, and then on the feet in those rounds, she's going to be laying on the guard a lot and being kind of messy with her work. But Godinez isn't going to land that clean either. And the judges are just going to go with Andrade because they think she hits harder. So, also, if this fight has a finish in it, I think Andrade is much more likely to get the finish. She finished Rose Namajunas. She can finish decent fighters. So, I don't think this fight's going to be a finish. I think there's a very strong chance it goes to decision. Same with the other women's fight. I think those are probably the 2 best bets on the card. These 2 fights to go to decision. But if this fight is finished, I think that Andrade is going to finish it. And back on the last fight, what's her name? Barboza versus Karine Silva. I think that Karine Silva is also more likely to get a finish, so that's another reason to pick her. But again, I don't think either of those fights are going to decision, so you can, I guess, ignore that. Next fight up the card, Michal Oleksiejczuk versus Gerald Meerschaert. I'm going with Oleksiejczuk. I think this is probably pound for pound the hardest fight to spell of all time. Oleksiejczuk, try to spell that right in the first try, bet you can. Meerschaert, deceptively hard to spell. It's got an Schaer. So yeah, on to the actual fight. Obviously, GM3, he's known for those spontaneous fluke submission wins or ground and pound wins. I just think that, 75 times out of 100, Oleksiejczuk is going to win just by being the better fighter. He's got pop on the feet. He's got decent counter wrestling. He's training with the Fighting Nerds. He's really explosive. He's pretty smart. He's not going to do what Shahbazyan does, where he drops GM3 with a body shot and then he goes head hunting on the ground. Maybe I'll eat my words. But I think Oleksiejczuk is a much better striker. He's a lot more dangerous. GM3 did get dropped by Rainer de Ritter with a punch, which is never a good look. So I'm going to go with Oleksiejczuk, probably just to be the better fighter. Again, Meerschaert could get a armbar off his back. Well, he doesn't really do that. I feel like a lot of people think that Meerschaert is like this, Paul Craig, where he's going to find a fluke armbar or triangle off the bottom. He doesn't really do that. If he finds a finish late in the fight, like Shahbazyan, he just worked to get top control and then it got an arm triangle. I'm pretty sure. And like Bruno Silva, he dropped him and then got a guillotine. It's never like he's on his back getting beaten up like Paul Craig against Krylov and he finds a fluke triangle, or like Paul Craig against Jamal Hill and he gets a fluke armbar. It's usually he finds top control and he gets a submission. So I don't think that it's going to be like Oleksiejczuk versus Holland, where he drops Holland and then tries punching him from his guard like Volkanovski and gets caught in an armbar. I think it's more likely to be Oleksiejczuk drops him and then beats him up from the guard in the round ends. Or Oleksiejczuk drops him, beats him up from his guard. GM3 goes for a triangle, doesn't get it, but gets top position and gets an armbar from there, or an arm triangle from there. So, yeah, I think that it's unlikely to get like a Krylov, Paul Craig type situation, which I think a lot of people are picking GM3 to do because it happened to Oleksiejczuk against Holland. So, also dropping Holland is no easy feat. Rarely does Holland get dropped. I know he got dropped fucking 3 times against D-Rod or whatever happened, but that's kind of that was a weird card, and it's rare for Holland to get dropped. So I think Oleksiejczuk could actually be pretty decent, especially when he easily finished Cedric Dumas when other people have struggled. Next fight up the card, Carlos Diego Ferreira versus Bobby Green, or King Green, whatever we're calling him. Does people actually call him King Green? I don't even know if the commentary does. So it's kind of like people called Kanye Ye for like a week, and then that stopped happening. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Carlos Diego Ferreira over Bobby Green, or King Green, just because Bobby Green is super, super chinny. I think people are underrating how chinny he is. In that Jim Miller fight, I know he won, but man, it seemed like every time he got touched, he was doing the chicken dance. In the Jalen Turner fight, he got put out cold by a jab that landed clean and then a 2 that hardly landed, and then he got punched 30 more times. And then, getting choked out the way he did against Paddy Pimblett, probably not good for your brain. And everyone thought he was going to be chinny going into the Hoovy fight, and everyone knew he was. And then he got wheel kick KO'd and then landed flat on his face. His chin is going to be weak in this fight. I'm thinking anything that Ferreira lands is going to do damage. And again, Bobby Green put out Grant Dawson in the first round. That's all we've really seen of him doing that. He's gotten some cumulative, TKOs and knockouts against chinny fighters before, but I don't think he's gonna do that against Carlos Diego Ferreira. He's not gonna out-grapple Carlos Diego Ferreira. He's not gonna gas out CDF. CDF he's dangerous into the whole fight. You see the Mateusz Rebecki fight. He gets dropped in the first round. The second round is shaky, but then at the end of the second round, he starts to pick it up, and he finishes Mateusz Rebecki in the third round. And Mateusz Rebecki is hard to finish, hard to put away. So did he finish him? Regardless, he beat the fuck out of him in the third round, which is no easy feat. And if he lands literally 1% of the shit he landed against Rebecki in the third round against Bobby Green's going out. The same thing I said with Hoofy, where it's Hoofy, against everyone he's fought under the UFC banner on the Contender Series and the UFC, he landed 4 or 5 strikes around that were going to put out Bobby Green. I knew it was going to happen, and it happened. Same as Carlos Diego Ferreira. In most of his fights, unless he's being out-grappled by Gamrot, or, in a close fight with Dariush, most of the rounds that he's landing at least 3 strikes that'll put out this Bobby Green chin. So I'm going to go with Carlos Diego Ferreira. He really hasn't taken Balogun really hasn't taken that much time off after being KO'd like that. So I don't love him in this fight quite yet. But yeah, on to the main card. We've got Kai Asakura versus Tim Elliott. I'm going with Kai Asakura. I think he's really good. I'm a big Rizin fan. You're going to see a lot of hashtag We Are Rizins after this fight, I'm pretty sure. Kai Asakura, I hope he does the walkout to the Rizin theme like he did in his last fight. But I hope things go differently for him. Yeah, I think Asakura is way too dangerous and way too big for Elliott to fight against him and survive being as weak and untechnical as he is. He's good at being crafty against guys who are one-dimensional or are unexperienced against good talent, like Tigir Ulanbekov was and Muhammad Mokaev was, and I'm sure someone else. But and he lost to Mokaev. He got finished in that fight, and he arguably lost to Tigir Ulanbekov, and he had to cheat like crazy to win that fight. So if that fight was in front of a real commission, not the Abu Dhabi or Saudi commission or whichever it was, he probably loses that fight by getting a point taken and loses the decision. And regardless, I think you replay those fights with those fighters, he probably loses most of the time anyways. I think he was more being crafty and a tricky veteran than he was being a better fighter. And a lot of the stuff he does in that fight, dunking Tigir Ulanbekov and beating him up on the feet by being weird, he's not going to do to Kai Asakura. And the reason why I think that is because Tim Elliott is a kind of a Rizin-ass fighter. The way he fights, you see a lot of, I like Rizin. I don't want to say lower level, but, Rizin has a lot of, weird styles where you see, people doing crazy shit like Tim Elliott does, where he's, switching stances and throwing really wide hooks and throwing, back fists with the lead hand, shit like that. You see that in Rizin a lot. You see that in some of the guys that Kai Asakura's fought and beat. And again, Asakura is just so dangerous. I really think that if Asakura lands, any of the strikes he landed on Horiguchi in that finishing sequence, or any of the strikes he landed on fucking Pantoja, that knee he landed on Pantoja, that knocks out everyone in the top 10 not named Joshua Van or Alexandre Pantoja. And even then, it might knock out Van because Van got knocked out by Charles Johnson. So, yeah, I just think that Asakura is so dangerous for a lot of these flyweights. I talked about before with the Ultimate Fighter guys, where you don't have to be super technical and you can be a little dirty and clanky and do weird shit at flyweight. But against a guy like Kai Asakura, he's the reason why you got to clean it up once you get towards the top, because if you're a little open on the feet, he's going to take advantage of it, unless you're as good at grappling and as hard-headed as Pantoja is, because Pantoja just ate that knee. And then actually, when Pantoja tried to take Asakura down against Cage, he really couldn't do it, which is shocking because Asakura has been fighting in a ring for, I think all of his fights in Rizin were against the ring, if I'm remembering correctly. I feel like he had one fight in the cage. Regardless, almost all his fights were in the ring, and he had no cage to work against other than the corner of the ropes, the turnstiles. And he looked really good against the cage. He's clearly been practicing with Horiguchi and some good guys over in Japan. And his takedown defense, other than the creative Pantoja crab ride, or jump on your back and make you fall to your ass. He looked really good in the takedown defense. So yeah, if Asakura has half the fight he did against Pantoja, he's finishing Tim Elliott in the first round. So that's what I'm picking him to do. I'm sure I'm 30 minutes into the video, and we're still on the first fight of the main card. So I'll try to move on a little quicker. But yeah, Asakura does have a hard weight cut, but I don't think Elliott has the style or ability to take advantage of someone having a bad chin from a drained chin from a weight cut, or having bad cardio from weight cut. He's not gonna. If Asakura starts to gas, it's not like Tim Elliott's going to hop on him and beat him up like Neil Magny did to Mike Malone. He's just going to maybe win the third round. I don't think he's going to finish him. So yeah. Next fight of the card, Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page. I just realized there's no way I'm going to finish this video in the next 20 minutes because I have a lot to say about all of these fights. So maybe put it on double speed, even though I already kind of talk a little too fast. But yeah, I'm picking Cannonier. The reason why, I think that Cannonier has the experience and the fight IQ to know that he can't play MVP's game what's his name? Holland did. He can't play the game kind of like Charbot didn't play the game because he was dumb. He played the game because he's one-dimensional and can't really do anything about a guy wanting to strike against him. So I think Cannonier knows that he can do what Ian Gary did and just out-grapple him. Once Ian Gary decided to make that fight a grappling match, he didn't lose a second for the rest of the fight. So if Cannonier comes into the fight with the game plan of, all right, I can maybe try to strike on the feet early, but if I'm losing, I got to go grapple him and beat him up on the ground. He knows he can do that because of how easy Ian Gary did it against MVP. I think Cannonier also has the technical ability to try to take advantage of the weaknesses in MVP's game. He's kind of predictable with his blitzes. He does a lot of feints, so it's hard to predict when he's going to go. But once he's going, you know it's coming. You know he's coming with a 1-2 or a 1-1-2 or nothing like that crazy. He's not doing a 1-2, 3-4, 3-4. Low kick on the end of it. He's going in and out pretty quickly. So that's predictable. He can take advantage of that. He also knows that leg kicks are the biggest weakness of MVP. I know Ian Gary wasn't able to implement them super well, but Ian Gary's kind of I don't want to say he's like a soy boy, but he's not going to kick a guy like Cannonier where if your lead leg is raised and Cannonier kicked your lead leg, it's getting kicked into your rear leg. Like that's especially if you're blitzing. So, and that's how you want to kick MVP as he's blitzing. You want to kick that front leg out so he falls on his ass, so you can hit him with an uppercut as he tries to stand up like Limo did. I think that he has the ability to take advantage of the weaknesses MVP has on the feet. And then he also has the brains to fucking take him down when he needs to. Another thing that Holland struggled a lot with was the I call it the blitzing cheese, like the fucking cheap bullshit that MVP does with the blitz, where he will, and Gunnar Nelson, who I like, kind of does a similar thing. He'll do a blitz, he'll hit you with the KSI 1-2 blitz, and then he'll get an underhook or get double unders and outside trip you or just step on your foot and push you over, so it looks like you got knocked down. So that was like when Holland did get knocked out legit, but a couple of times where Holland gets like thrown to the ground, MVP just going with like a 1-2 and then shoving Holland onto his ass. And he did this a lot in Bellator too, where it's like you'll see Bellator post like crazy MVP highlights, and a lot of them are just like MVP misses a 1-2 and then throws a guy into his butt, and they're like, what a big knockdown. You get the huge crowd pop. I think that Cannonier is way too big for MVP to be able to do that. Like if I went up to Ian Gary right now and he wasn't ready for it and I shoved him, like put both my hands on both of his shoulders and shoved him as hard as I could, he'd probably fall to his feet. Or if I did it to Holland, he'd probably fall to his feet. If I did that to Cannonier, I don't think he's going to fall to his feet, and I think he's probably going to knock me out if I do that. I think Ian Gary would probably apologize to me if I did that. But I don't think that blitzing cheese is going to work nearly as well against an opponent as large as Cannonier. Cannonier used to be I think he used to fight at heavyweight. He used to definitely be at 205. So he's a big motherfucker, and I don't think you're going to be able to do that super easily. I also think Cannonier has the perfect balance of aggression and patience. You saw this a lot in his last fight against Gerald, where he knows when to go. He's not going to just like sit there and let Gerald punch him, but he's also not going to sit there and let Gerald just walk away and not deal with any competition. So he's going to be aggressive when he needs to. He's going to be patient when he needs to. I think he doesn't get enough credit for how good his IQ is. I think that another big thing that separates him from the Ian Gary fight is that when Ian Gary ended up on MVP's back, he was like, okay, I win there. If I sit here for the rest round, I win. I can just be on his back. I'm not going to be able to posture up and hurt him from here. But if I'm here for the rest round, he's not going to be able to knock me out, and I'll win the round. I think that Cannonier has a similar thing where if he takes him down, he can hold him down, but he's big enough that he can posture and he can land elbows from side control. He can land punches from the back flattened out position. He can land big elbows from out. And he can finish MVP from the ground, even if MVP isn't rocked. And I think this is the most important fight to look at when you're looking at Cannonier's chance to beat MVP is the fight between Cannonier and Brunson. Brunson was taking Cannonier down. He's holding him against a cage, and I don't think MVP is going to do this, obviously, but Cannonier realizes that he can't just let Brunson hold him. So what he did is when Brunson shot in, he shucked him off, he slammed him to the ground, and he knocked him out with elbows and finished him from on top. He realized that his game plan wasn't working, which I think he might, there's a pretty good chance he's going to start off and try to just strike on the feet with MVP, and that's not going to work. Or if it doesn't work, he can switch his game plan like he did against Brunson, take him down, bring him down to side control, and knock him the fuck out with elbows. So, you see this a lot with Holland. People give MVP a lot of credit for beating Holland and Holland having no answers to his game. Holland has no answers when he faces any adversity. You look against Dolidze, he has any problems? Oh, rib injury. You look against I don't know. I mean, Holland has a reputation for like Wonder Boy. He starts to lose on the feet. He gets the takedown, but he doesn't want to be the bitch, so he just lets him up and lets them get in a striking match. It's like, of course, Holland isn't going to adapt against MVP. He's not going to adapt against anyone. So I think Cannonier has the IQ to adapt, and we've seen that in the Brunson fight. And he has the patience. He has the right aggression. and he has the experience and the IQ and the power and the size. So MVP could beat him in the way that he's beaten, Shaw. But again, like I said, of course Shaw didn't adapt because he doesn't have grappling. Because he doesn't have anything else but his tappy kicks on the outside and a couple good punches, especially since he's been off the sauce. So, yeah, I think Cannonier has the ability to adapt in the way that Ian Gary did adapt, in the way that Holland and Shaw weren't able to. Next fight up the card, Carlos Prates versus Geoff Neal. I'm going Carlos Prates. I think Carlos Prates is really underrated, which is weird. I know we had a bad performance against Ian Gary. And I think it definitely is a knock on Carlos Prates' record. Like, that was a bad performance. He was way too hesitant. He let Ian Gary beat him up for the first, 3.5 rounds. But I do think he's truly one of the most dynamic and dangerous strikers in the sport. And I don't really see anyone at welterweight beating him in a striking match. Like, when I say striking match, I don't mean like a Ian Gary fight. I mean like a voluminous back and forth tit for tat, like Andalusa versus JDM or Geoff Neal versus Shavkat. I don't see anyone in the division beating him in that type of fight other than JDM. And I think that Geoff Neal is always looking for this kind of fight. And a problem with him looking for that kind of fight is that he's going to play into Geoff Neal or into Carlos Prates perfectly, because Geoff Neal always falls victim to forcing this fight and then following his opponents and losing on the feet. You see the Shavkat fight. Shavkat has a really bad striking defense, and I'll get to that in a second. But Geoff Neal still just followed him on the feet, didn't take advantage of his weaknesses, and got beat up and got rocked a bunch. I know he rocked Shavkat a bunch, but again, I'll talk about that in a second. And then Ian Gary, Geoff Neal followed him the whole time, and Ian Gary used lateral movement to get out of the way, and Geoff Neal had no answers for it. Although Ian Gary was able to make Prates hesitant by moving backwards and using lateral movement and circling the entire fight, I don't think Geoff Neal, I think we can all agree, Geoff Neal doesn't really have the skill to back up tit for tat, tap a low kick, tap a jab, and then circle. I don't think he has the skill to do that, and I don't even think he wants to do that because he's never done that in a fight. And that would be, the most successful way. That's how Ian Gary made Prates hesitant, was just going tit for tat and circling him and making him worry about that power on the back foot. But I do think that Geoff Neal could make Prates hesitant if he used volume and pressure, if he kept walking forward. Kind of like how Trevin Giles was able to do. Trevin Giles won the first half of the first round against Carlos Prates by going after him, using a jab, using leg kicks, using volume to make him hesitant. But similar to Trevin Giles, I don't think that Geoff Neal has a skill to walk forward against one of the most dangerous strikers in the division and keep him busy the whole time without getting hit and finished. Now, I know Trevin Giles is chinny, but you're telling me that Geoff Neal is going to take the knee to the gut and then the right hand or was it left hand, whatever, he's going to take the straight punch and go on to win the rest of the fight like the one that Trevin Giles did? I definitely don't think so. So if Geoff Neal moves backwards, I think he's going to get stalked and finished, kind of how Li Jingliang did, where Li Jingliang couldn't find the volume to keep Prates off of him, and he couldn't find the big shots to get Prates respect, so he just got walked down, and eventually Prates just found his timing, found his chin, found his range, and beat the fuck out of him and finished him badly. And if Geoff Neal tries to do that, I think that's what's gonna happen to him. And if Geoff Neal tries to move forward like Trevin Giles did, he's not gonna have the skill, just like Trevin Giles, to keep Prates active, keep him moving, keep him off of his power, and win the fight. I think that Geoff Neal, if they get into a boxing trading swing match, he has about a 30% chance of just knocking out Carlos Prates as they trade left hooks or something like that, or as he goes for a straight right as Prates goes for a left hook, even though I think it will probably be, if Prates is smart, he'll make this fight opposite stance. But yeah, I don't think that if this fight is, Geoff Neal tries to set the pace by backing up or moving forward and slowing down Prates, which is how Ian Gary had to beat him. I don't think he has the skills to do that. So, obviously, whenever there's a striker or a striker, and people are thinking about picking against him, to think about the grappling. But I don't think nearly enough people talk about how good Prates looked in the counter grappling against Neil Magny and Ian Gary. Ian Gary is I'm pretty sure he's a national champion in judo. He's got pretty good takedowns. We saw how good his grappling was against Shavkat, who's a highly touted grappler. I think he's probably the most overrated fighter in the division, but he's a good grappler. And Prates just used a simple switch. He just reached down, grabbed the close leg, got it, both of his arms on the outside, hit a switch on Ian Gary. I think he started off 10 for 10 on takedown defense against Ian Gary. He got taken down later in the fight, but that switch was working super well. Same thing with what's his name? Neal Magny. Neal Magny, same thing. We go for a single leg. Prates hit a switch, the stuff to take down. He got taken down once, but he used butterfly hooks to elevate Neal Magny, get him away from him and stand up. He looked really good in the counter grappling in the 2 fights where he's had to grapple so far. And all of the fighting nerds, you can say the same thing about them. Like, they've all looked good in the counter grappling. Again, Gene Silva against Bryce Mitchell won the grappling exchanges in that fight. And Mauricio Hufi against the guy he fought on the Contender Series. He ended up winning with the grappling. So I don't think, I don't think people are going to pick Geoff Neal for the grappling, but that base is covered in my head. If you want to talk about the clinch, they both fought, Neal Magny, who's a clinch wizard. Geoff Neal lost the fight because he couldn't get out of the clinch. He couldn't prevent the total strikes in the clinch in the 3rd round, I'm pretty sure it was. And Carlos Prates was able to break the clinch and finish Neal Magny against the cage after circling away from the clinch. So I don't think that Geoff Neal is going to be able to beat Prates on the feet, in the clinch, or on the ground. Ian Gary was able to take advantage of Carlos Prates' tall man defense, especially in that one big combo you saw. He threw a lead uppercut, right hand, and then a left hook or something like that. But Geoff Neal fought Shavkat, who has the worst tall man defense in the sport, where he just leans back instead of putting his hands up or circling or using lateral movement at all. And Geoff Neal didn't do fucking shit with it. He rocked him once, but he lost that fight on the feet. And Carlos Prates is much better than Shavkat at defense while backing up. So I don't think Prates' defense is that good. It's amazing or anything, but I think that he's able to do a shoulder roll or put his hands up or lean back and circle at the same time, rather than Shavkat, where he's just I'm going to put both my hands on your shoulders and lean back and hope you don't hit me as I'm moving backwards. So, yeah. Co-main event, Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. I'm going with Lerone Murphy. I'm going with the UFC boy over the Bellator boy. And a lot of people are picking Lerone Murphy because they're like, oh, we saw Patchy Mix fail in the UFC, and we saw Patricio Pitbull fail in the UFC. I'm not just picking them because of that, but there is something to that. A lot of people gave Patchy Mix and Patricio Pitbull shit for fighting cans outside the UFC, and the same thing with MVP. But if any fighter outside the UFC who's coming in and getting a top-ranked guy fought cans outside the UFC, it's fucking Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico fought bums outside the UFC. And I know he, did what you should do against bums and finished most of them in the 1st or 2nd round. But he fought Adam Borix early in his career, and he lost. He got flying knee KO'd. Before that, he lost his fight before that. I know he got, I think his name was Corrales, and he got, back in blood. He finished that guy a couple years later. But he fought Jeremy Kennedy, a guy who was good in the UFC, who had a close fight with Volkanovski, and he tore a shoulder in that fight and lost. And it's I know, you can be oh, that was kind of a fluky loss. But the times where he fought the good fighters in Bellator, Adam Borix, or Adam whatever his name is, Jeremy Kennedy, and I think that's it as far as the good fighters he fought. He lost both of those fights. So, people are accusing Patchy Mix and Patricio Pitbull of being can crushers. Patchy Mix beat, Magomed Magdalena, whatever his name is. He beat Sergio Pettis. He beat Kyoji Horiguchi. Those are some pretty decent wins. Patricio Pitbull, beat Michael Chandler. They all fought pretty decent guys, other than Aaron Pico, who fought 2 decent guys and lost both of the fights. One of them by a fluke knockout, one of them by a fluke injury. But he doesn't have any wins over any of the decent guys that were in his division in Bellator. He never beat Pitbull. He never beat fucking Patchy Mix. He never beat any of those guys. So he never beat Paul Hughes. He never beat any of the guys that came in from the PFL. He never beat AJ McKee. So it's hard for me to be I'm not going to use, Patchy Mix against him. I think Patchy Mix had a better chance for winning his debut than Aaron Pico, and he looked like shit. And one thing that people are not talking about enough, Lerone Murphy is taking this fight on 3 or 4 weeks notice. They both are, but obviously Pico had the training camp for Evloev before, so this is a 10-week long training camp. And people are being Lerone Murphy is only preparing for Aaron Pico for 3 weeks. So I'm going to pick Aaron Pico to knock him out because that's a hard guy to prepare for. If you think about it, Lerone Murphy has been preparing for Aaron Pico for over a year. He fought Edson Barboza, who's an explosive, dynamic guy who's got, a lot of head bouncing and strong strikes from, boxing range. He fought Josh Emmett, same thing. And he fought Dan Ige, same thing. And against Josh Emmett and Edson Barboza, He fought 5-round fights against both of them in 50-45, both of them. And they're both like the two of the most explosive and dynamic guys in the UFC featherweight division's history. Other than like Jose Aldo, I think he fought like probably, two of the top 5 guys in those categories. And Aaron Pico is that. I know we got dropped by Danny Ige, but if you consider those fights the same thing, like he fought the same guy 3 times in a row, or he fought Aaron Pico thrice. He fought 13 rounds against him, and he lost one of them to Danny Ige. Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm talking about with Aaron Pico's resume. I haven't seen anything from Aaron Pico that tells me he's better at setting up traps or getting on the inside or breaking technical opponents than Josh Emmett and Edson Barboza are. Especially when we consider that when Aaron Pico is finding these chins of the guys he's fighting, he's doing it against complete bums, like that anyone in the UFC ranked divisions would beat, or in the featherweight division ranked. They would all beat the guys that Aaron Pico won, probably at a similar level of success. I don't think it can be stated how much Murphy has prepared for this type of opponent in his last 3 fights, and because of his success against Danny Ige, against Josh Emmett, and against Edson Barboza, he's going to have more confidence, more composure than ever. I mean, if you look against the Edson Barboza fight, he had Edson Barboza backed up against the cage for most of that fight, and he didn't let go a ton. He did outland Edson Barboza like 2-1 or 3-1, but he wasn't that crazy with his punches. But as he fought Danny Ige and as he fought Josh Emmett, he got a lot more confident letting his hands go, beating those guys up, and he had a lot more success going forward, other than the one time he got dropped by Danny Ige. I just think that his confidence and his composure is going to ramp up, and he's going to do better than he did against the last 3 fighters he fought. Especially if we consider that against Edson Barboza and Josh Emmett, he had to survive 5 rounds against them and win the entire time. Like, that was the style of fight you basically had to fight. In this fight, he's only got to survive 3 rounds. So, I think Murphy, I know Aaron Pico is a good grappler. That was kind of his story going into Bellator, is he was a gold glove boxer who was, undefeated as an amateur boxer, and he also was, all-American wrestler or whatever. But I think that Murphy's a pretty good grappler. We've seen that American style of wrestling fight against, guys from Manchester. I think they're pretty sure that Lauren Murphy trains with Leon Edwards. I mean, we saw how ineffective Colby Covington was at MMA grappling. We haven't really seen Aaron Pico use his grappling that successfully against anyone but Adam Borix, who's like that good. I think the fight will mainly be Lerone Murphy controlling the pace, Aaron Pico looking for those big shots, but Murphy just doing too much and being too active and getting out of the way too often for Pico to have any success in the feet. And I think that Lerone Murphy is good enough at counter grappling to stuff a takedown, back up, find the space. We saw that Josh Emmett got that one big slam against Lerone Murphy, and everyone scored that round for him because he got a slam and did nothing else in the round. But he slams Lerone Murphy gets to his knees, gets to his hands, gets on all 4. He gets up, finds space, gets back to his game, and beats the fuck out of Josh Emmett for the rest of the fight. And Josh Emmett can throw the hissy fit at the end, but Lerone Murphy outclassed him and beat him by being the better fighter. So, he also, Lerone Murphy KO'd Makwan Amirkhani with a flying knee, or like a lift knee, up the middle. He knocked him out bad. And Aaron Pico got knocked out bad by against his best opponent with a flying knee. So, the matchups that they've had, they're similar. Lerone Murphy has looked really good. Pico hasn't fought anyone that good, so it's hard to be like, yeah, he's definitely better than Josh Emmett and Edson Barboza and Danny Ige. He can definitely separate himself from that pack, even though Lerone Murphy was levels above all 3 of them. So, other than Danny Ige. But I guess it is a 3-round fight, and Pico could get a knockdown and then make another round close and get a close decision. But I've seen nothing from his resume that tells me, yeah, he's going to separate himself from Josh Emmett and Edson Barboza easily. He's going to do... I think it would be safe to argue that Lerone Murphy did twice as good as Josh Emmett and twice as good as Edson Barboza. And what on earth is telling you that Aaron Pico is going to do twice as good as Josh Emmett, twice as good as Edson Barboza at the game plan that Lerone Murphy had, or against the game plan that Lerone Murphy has had for his last 3 fights? That's my pick. So, yeah. Next fight of the card, on to the main event. We're 50 minutes in. We've got the main event. I've written 2 pages of shit about this fight, so let's get through it quick. Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. Not to bury the lead. I'm picking Khamzat Chimaev. And this is the main reason why. I think there's about a 40% chance that Khamzat comes out, takes down Dricus du Plessis, and then subs him or TKOs him in the first 2 minutes. And I think that because that is how most of Khamzat Chimaev's fights have gone in the UFC. Kevin Holland, Li Jingliang, Reese McKee, Trevor Phillips, whatever that guy's name was, Robert Whittaker. Most of the fights that Khamzat Chimaev has in the UFC, he goes out, takes a guy down, submits him or TKOs him in the first round, or one of his earlier fights, it was in the second round, but he outlanded the guy 117-1. So I think there's about a 40% chance the fight starts and he dominates it and finishes it immediately, which isn't a 100% chance, not even 50% chance. But if the fight goes past that first 2-3 minute mark, Dricus du Plessis survives the onslaught, I think Dricus du Plessis will have a huge advantage going forward. But for a couple reasons, I think Khamzat still has a good chance to win. If DDP survives the first round, it will likely be the way that the Usman fight went, or the way the Whittaker fight was going, where Usman just stayed composed after Khamzat got in the good dominant position, but Khamzat couldn't get the finish because, like I said, Usman stayed composed, or Whittaker was doing good at fighting out the positions, or because Khamzat knows the fight will be 5 rounds and is going to be not hesitant but patient, and focuses on staying in good position rather than getting the finish. If Khamzat is patient, I think that he will delay that danger into the second round and maybe the third, just to a lower degree. Obviously, if he's less tenacious, he's going to struggle to find the finish more. But if he drags that patience out for a couple rounds, I think he can drag the danger out for a couple rounds, and I think that he will prolong his ability to win the fight. But like I said, if he has 40% chance to win the fight in the first 3 minutes or 2 minutes, if he's patient, he can have a 20% chance to find that finish all the way to the end of the third. So there's that pathway the fight can go. Or if Dricus survives because DDP is composed and Khamzat goes all out for the finish, Chimaev will be in a similar position as he was against Usman in the second round, but he will be against an opponent who is much more dangerous, who isn't taking the fight on 9 days notice, and has 4 rounds to survive rather than 2 rounds. And the reason why I think Chimaev will still have a chance in the latter scenario where he's got to stand in front of Dricus and survive for the next 4 rounds is because there's a couple reasons. One, even though Dricus du Plessis has the cardio, and especially, this is more important than cardio, he doesn't have the best cardio. I think he looks tired in most of his fights after the first couple rounds, but he's got that motor, he's got that push in him. He's got a huge advantage in that later in the fight. So I'm trying to think of it, like in the Adesanya fight. We've seen Khamzat look as gassed in third rounds and second rounds, like in the Burns fight maybe, or the third round of the Usman fight, as we saw Dricus look in the third and fourth round against Adesanya. But Dricus goes out there, he runs after him, he finds a takedown, jumps on his back and submits him. Whereas in the third round against Burns and the third round against Usman especially, Khamzat looked more to just go tit for tat, try to survive, don't make the fight super scrappy, don't push for the finish super hard, just kind of go with the flow. Whereas Dricus will try to push his advantages, even if he's a little bit gassed out. I think even though he has that advantage, he's got that goofiness, and I think a lot of people are misled with the goofiness. They'll see a lot of the highlights from the Brunson fight or the Tavares fight, where Dricus pulls mount, or he pulls half guard, or he does a bad blitz and he ends up on his back, or he misses a punch, like when he headbutts Strickland. And I think that will negatively affect Dricus, but a lot of people are like, wow, Dricus is doing this and Khamzat isn't going to take him down. If you're arguing that Khamzat isn't going to take Dricus down in the first round, you're an idiot. I don't think that goofiness is going to affect Dricus in the first round, because no one's been able to stuff the grappling in the first round at all for Khamzat. I think that will impact Dricus as the fight goes on. When Dricus pulls mount, or pulls half guard, or falls on his back, or does a blitz and keeps himself off balance, that's when later in the fight, when Khamzat is gassed, he can just grab Dricus by the hips and fall onto him. Or he can shoot a lazy double leg and create a scramble and maybe find his back. That is where the goofiness will hurt Dricus. It will not be in the first round when Khamzat's looking for the takedown, looking for the finish early. Even if Khamzat doesn't have that gas tank, he doesn't need it to just grab Dricus down and do the double leg takedown. He's been practiced his entire life. Specifically Dricus's blitzing strikes, I think they leave him really off balance and with momentum into his opponents. Like I said with the Adesanya fight, like if you looked at the last blitz he kind of rented him with, he like literally sprinted Adesanya, and then instead of like doing a takedown, he just grabbed Adesanya around the hips and then fell into him with the momentum from the blitz, and he took Adesanya down. And if Khamzat does the same thing, if DDP blitzes at him, if Khamzat grabs DDP by the hips, DDP is just going to fall into him, and they're going to end up on the ground. Another reason why Drickus might struggle later in the fight. Drickus likes to wrestle up from positions like half guard and side control with technical stands up or similar techniques. So what I mean by this is, you might have seen in the Burns fight, Burns pulled guard against Khamzat, and Khamzat just got up because he thought he could push his advantage on the feet. If Khamzat is gassed, he's worried about Drickus like beating him up on the feet. If he takes down Drickus and ends up in his guard or in half guard or in side control or something like that, where he doesn't have a dominant finishing position, but he's on top of him and he's controlling him, he will stay there because he's not worried about Drickus summoning him off his back, and he can hold him down and recoup and get some energy back, and maybe try to sap Drickus while he's there, but mainly just regenerating energy himself. However, against Brunson, when Drickus was in these positions, the way he would stand up is he would use an off balance, or he would use some sort of reversal or sweep attempt to create a scramble and then put his head in the middle and not go for a takedown against Brunson, but get a body lock or get a single leg and let himself get to his feet so he can build up and separate. You see a lot of fighters do this. You see a masterclass in this was JDM against Bilal Muhammad, and he gets taken down at the beginning of the fifth round, and he uses a knee lever sweep to create an off balance and then shove his, go for a single leg, shove his head underneath Bilal, get his feet underneath him and stand up. And then from there, he was able to separate. He did it later in the fight. He got taken, or he going for a takedown and got reversed, ended up in a sprawled out position, and then Bilal went for his back, and then he rolled for a leg and was able to use that scramble to stand up. The problem with doing this against a fighter like Khamzat is that Khamzat's best submissions are his front chokes, his guillotine and his darce. He's got a dangerous darce that he used really badly against Kevin Holland, was able to finish in the first round. And Kevin Holland's got really good darce chokes, and he's got really good darce defense too. You see the Cowboy Oliveira fight. He gets put in a darce at the end of the first round. He's doing a thumbs up because he's he's safe. He's taunting to the crowd while he's in the darce. Khamzat finished him immediately in the first round with a darce choke. If du Plessis tries to do a technical stand-up from half guard or create a scramble and use a single leg to stand up, he will get put in a darce very badly, or an anaconda, or a guillotine, or a ninja choke, or something, a front choke, by Khamzat, and get put out. And that is my prediction for how this fight will go if it doesn't end in the beginning of the first round. I think that Khamzat will take Drickus du Plessis down from a blitz. He will end up in his half guard. Drickus du Plessis will be like, I need to get him up. I can't let him get his energy back. He will go for a technical stand-up. He will put his head in the middle, and he will put his head into a darce choke and get choked out and finished in like the third or fourth round. But yeah, I'll keep going with the other advantages or the disadvantages that DDP has later in the fight. I think that DDP is a good, effective striker, and that will matter a lot later in the fight. However, he is not good at hurting his opponents and beating them up while they don't want to engage with him. You look at all of his finishes in the UFC on the feet. The Whitaker fight. When Whitaker throws a jab and gets intercepted with a jab, that's when he gets rocked. When Trevin Giles throws a big combination against DDP against the cage and drops his hands and leaves his chin open, that's when he gets knocked out. When Marcus Perez overextends on a combination and doesn't he spin or something, when he gets knocked out, he's going forward. Anytime that DDP hurts someone on the feet in the UFC is when they are coming forward. If DDP has to, other than the Whitaker fight where Whitaker was really badly rocked, if DDP's got to go out and beat someone up, he really struggles to find openings. In the second Strickland fight, I think it was in the fifth round or maybe the fourth round, DDP broke Strickland's nose with like a spinning back fist or something. And Strickland, you can tell he's feeling it. He's putting his hand on his nose. He's wiping the blood off. He doesn't want to be there. He's moving away from DDP. DDP can't land a fucking punch on him. If Strickland wasn't going towards him, DDP couldn't land shit. He could land a couple good kicks, but he couldn't beat the guy up and finish him when he was there to be finished. And that will be a scenario with Khamzat later in the fight if Khamzat survives and DDP survives. If we're in the fifth round and Khamzat is completely gassed, I don't think that DDP is going to be able to just jump on the guy and finish him. Even against Darren Till, DDP had Till hurt really bad in the first round, and even he put everything into it. He pretty much gassed himself out in the first round. He couldn't just beat Darren Till up against the cage and finish him. And if they end up in that scenario, I can see Khamzat surviving, getting 10-8 in the 5th round, and then maybe it's a draw or it's a close decision. So yeah, that's another thing. But DDP isn't very good at. He's not very good at just putting it on a guy and finishing them. Like if the guy's backing up, he's going to show the land strikes. And then the last disadvantage that DDP has later in the fight is that DDP is not a very good pocket boxer. This is kind of the same as last point, but if Khamzat is going to be there to trade with DDP, DDP's not going to JDM, slip a punch, switch stances, throw a 1-2, switch stances, throw a left hook. He's not going to be able to just put it on Khamzat, even though he's the better striker. And if he's going to need a finish in the 5th round, or if he's going to need to take advantage of Khamzat being gassed out while Khamzat's standing in front of him and is not on top of him, I don't think he's going to be able to do it super easily with just throwing a combination, throwing a 1-2 left hook or a 1-2 switch left straight, something like that. I don't think he's going to be able to do that super easily. When it was the Adesanya fight, again, he finished Adesanya in Darren Till with a submission. And those are the 2 times when the guys weren't coming right at him. So yeah, I just don't think that DDP is going to be able to easily finish Khamzat later in the fight. And I think that Khamzat has, again, that big chance of just finishing him early, and then he has a couple ways to, win rounds later in the fight if he doesn't get the finish in the first, or maybe get a finish in the 2nd or 3rd. And then again, he always has that front choke. I'm really good at front chokes, and DDP shoves his head into front chokes against people that want to wrestle against him. Brunson was never going to throw on a Darce or an Anaconda choke and finish DDP, but DDP put himself in situations that would allow Brunson to do it if he had that skill set. So yeah, those are my picks for UFC, 319. It's in my hometown of Chicago, so I guess the 6:30, stand up. Yeah, let me know what you think of my picks. Like the video, share the video, follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description. Again, if you want to watch any of my previous prediction videos, I've got them going back to January on a playlist on my channel. Subscribe. Again, comment if there's something you agree or disagree with or want to hear more about. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be live tweeting the event. I just watched the Contender Series, live tweeted that. Yeah, that is all. As always, thank you for listening. And yeah, hopefully, this is a good card. It'll be the first one in a while.